Hey kids, Mr. Fly here. Hope you're well in these continually odd times. And welcome to another edition of Bike News, this time for the month of May 2020. If you're interested in what's been going on in the world of motorcycles here in the UK for the last month, stick around and stay tuned. Okay, so as usual, I've got 4 copies of MCN to go through in this edition of Bike News. As I say, grab yourself a cup of tea or something. This could go on a little while. I'm still amazed that MCN have managed to get out such fat, packed full newspapers over this period, given we've been in lockdown for the majority of it. So huge thumbs up to MCN for doing that. Some of the deliveries have been a bit late, so they're a bit, probably one paper behind, but we'll catch that one up next time round. Anyway, without further ado, let's crack on. So, first paper then, and the first story in the first paper is this one. TT fans pay the price, and this is a bit of a shame of a story actually. It's the first few stories actually are a bit negative, so sorry about that. But this is basically, as we know, the Isle of Man TT has been cancelled this year, alas. And of course, to get to the TT, if you want to go, accommodation is always an issue. You have to book up way in advance. So of course, people booked up hotels last year and before for this year's TT, and of course the event's now been cancelled, and a number of hotels on the island have not been able to offer refunds. And it's I mean, this is obviously a story of two halves. Of course, people have businesses to protect, but also, you know, there are the punters that go out there every year, and the TT sort of drives the Isle of Man's economy to some degree. So really, businesses on the island needs to keep the fans happy. Anyway, a couple of things I pulled out here. So first off, says here that the Ellen Vannin Hotel in Douglas, this guy, John Graham, booked his stay up there, cost him £1,365, so £1.5 he paid, and they basically said they wouldn't give him a refund. He said he phoned them a while ago, and it was just an outright no, we're not giving you a refund, and we're not moving your bookings to next year, which is just an outrageous attitude. Of course, again, this is just what I'm reading here. I don't know exactly what happened, but that doesn't sound good, does it? The hotel says that the rooms are still available to use, meaning no refund or alterations will be considered, which just sounds outrageous, doesn't it? It's not just the Ellen Vannin Hotel that's for the slating, though. Another one here, the Palace Hotel and Casino in Douglas. They've also, in fact, they refused to discuss their bookings for a 3-night booking that was made for 24 bikers. Was made in late April, and they won't even discuss that one. So, and that's just, you know, there's lots of examples here of businesses doing that sort of thing. Again, I do understand businesses still need to run despite the coronavirus stuff, but this isn't the way to make yourselves, you know, to endear yourself to fans, is it? So, real shame that that's happening. So, thumbs down to those businesses that aren't at least being a little bit flexible, maybe coming to some sort of arrangement with genuine biking fans there. So I'm doubly gutting because I was hoping to get to the TT this year, but maybe next year. Okay, next story here, again a negative one, and it's again, I'm sorry, but linked to coronavirus. Keep bikes locked up while in lockdown is the headline here, and the police are basically saying they've seen a rise in bike crime during this whole virus lockdown, which is sort of counterintuitive. So it says here, regularly check on your security and upgrade if necessary is the message from police across the UK as forces see a rise in joyriding during lockdown. Reports from all around the UK show an increase in machines of all types being taken. So, yeah, nightmare. And as I say, sort of counterintuitive. You don't necessarily expect that, but maybe these opportunist thieves are thinking that bikes are easy to nick. I don't know. Anyway, I've got a video coming up soon about what I do to keep my bike safe, both in the garage and when you're out and about. So stay tuned for that. It's about a month's time before you see it. But a lot of people have been asking me, for example, about the barrier that you see on some of my videos that I have across my garage. It's called the Guardsman, and there's again, that's featured in that security video that's coming up. So stick around to the channel for that, and hopefully that's, you know, might give you some ideas for how you can keep your bike safe. Anyway, moving on. Next story here, and this is a letter. Focus on building bikes. The letter's from somebody called Colin Humphreys, and this is relating to the story that we talked about in last month's Bike News a lot, the Norton buyout by TVS. And what Colin is saying is that he hopes that they will now shelve any racing plans for a while and just concentrate on building bikes and fulfilling orders. And I raise this and point this out purely because I completely agree with Colin. One of my criticisms about Norton long before this whole fiasco started was that they were stretching themselves too thin, what with the race programme, the sheer number of new models and so on, yet they didn't have the capability to deliver them. I think TVS is of course a proper motorcycle manufacturer. They know what they're doing in terms of volumes. I think they will absolutely get this thing turned around, and I can't wait to see Norton, and the name of Norton in particular, restored to some sort of glory. So fingers crossed, not that on what's going to happen with Norton going forward. But yeah, let's hope that they just get the bikes built rather than do, you know, try and spread themselves too thinly once again. Okay, next up, Swiss Army bikes. This is one of these MCN 250 comparison tests, and they've gone here for what we call all-rounder bikes. Sometimes unfairly, because people think of all-rounders as not being very exciting. But in this case, I would disagree. They're riding the BMW F900XR, the Yamaha Tracer 900 GT, and the Honda VFR 800X Crossrunner. All bikes I've ridden to some degree or other. And these are, if you could only have one motorcycle, all three of these would be an excellent choice. I personally, out of all of them, prefer the BMW F900XR, although the Tracer is probably the market leader, I would say. But great bikes. But let's just see what MCN made of them, because these are very much practical, real-world bikes. They've said it's a three-way fight for the top spot. Sounds like a cop-out, but whichever of these you buy, it'll bring you joy. All three are dynamically capable, well-made and attractively priced, and I would agree with that, and actually that's the case these days for all new bikes. They're all pretty good, to be honest, and these three are certainly no exception. Then they go on to say, but, there's always a but, the Tracer 900 GT remains best in class. It rivals the others on practicality and usability, yet also has performance, sound and feel that make it more inspiring and rewarding. So they prefer the Yamaha Tracer, which has been kind of the class leader for a while now. As I say, myself, I prefer the BMW. It just feels a little better built to me. The Tracer 900 to me, just some of the plastics and stuff, the fairing just felt a little bit flimsy, but that's a personal opinion. You may not think that. The BMW seemed a little bit more solid. And also I think I prefer the slightly more modern look of the BMW, whereas the Tracer is still a bit waspish for my liking. But as they say here, it's very much a personal choice. These bikes are all great, and you just basically just go for the one you like the look of. All right, so that was the review in that paper. Not many reviews going on at the moment, obviously, because of the lockdown. Okay, next up. Oh, this is a series that MCN have been running now for probably over a year. It's called the Bucket List. I don't often mention it here on Bike News, and they basically list things that all bikers should do during their biking life. And this one I mentioned because it's the NC 500, North Coast 500, that sort of lap of the north and west of Scotland, on the coast, obviously. And it is an absolutely cracking ride. I did this, it's about 2 years ago exactly now, I think, that I did this, and there are videos on my channel if you haven't seen them. It was such a great ride. I was very lucky in that I had lovely weather while I was up there, which makes all the difference when you're in Scotland, of course. But if you are in the UK, or even if you're in Europe and you can get to the UK, this is definitely a ride you should try and do. It's undoubtedly, in my mind, the best rider you can do in the United Kingdom. It is absolutely superb. Don't overstretch yourself, though. I would say it's you know, it is quite gnarly riding in that it's not big fast roads. There's a lot of these single track roads, lots of gnarly bends and stuff. You don't cover a lot of miles in a day, so don't, you know, budget for about 150 miles a day max, and even then you're going to be absolutely whacked at the end of the day. I stretched it a bit and sort of paid the price. And anyway, you want to take in the scenery. It's absolutely lovely. So yeah, I agree with this bucket list item. Get and do the NC 500 if you have the chance. It's absolutely amazing. Although you can't do it at the moment, of course, because Scotland is still fully locked down, of which more later. Alrighty, that was it for the first paper. How are we doing for time? We're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Watcher, sorry to interrupt, we'll get straight back to the main video in a mo. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give a massive shout out to my most recent patrons. The names are here. And it's a massive thank you to you and my channel members, because it's down to you guys that I can keep the Missenden Flyer going. So huge thanks to you guys. If you don't know what Patron is, well, I've made a video about that as well. It's just here. Go follow that link if you're interested. Alternatively, you can always become a member of the channel. It's kind of a similar thing, but between you and me, I kind of prefer Patron. It's just a little bit more flexible. But anyway, up to you. All right, thanks for that. Let's get back to the video.
Right, second paper then, headline on this, 40 years of the GS. Would you believe 40 years since they came out with the BMW GS? And we'll talk more about that as we get through the paper. Of course, me being a GS fan. First story in here that I want to pick up was this, the carbon, it says carbon fibre race replica is the headline here, and it's the Indian FTR1200. They've come up with a carbon version. It's interesting to me because I haven't ridden that many American bikes, certainly not cruisers and stuff. Not that this really is a cruiser, it's sort of a flat tracker type bike, I suppose. This is one I have ridden. I went down to Crazy Horse in Bury St Edmunds, or up to Bury St Edmunds actually last year, and rode this. And I was hoping to get over there to ride a load more stuff this year again, but that's been thwarted for the time being at least. But I really like this bike. It just felt like a quality bit of kit. Anyway, Indian have come up with this. It's called the FTR Carbon. Mechanically, nothing has changed. It's still powered by the 1203cc V-twin, massive old lump. But where it steps away from the standard model is in the finish. The headlight surround, tank covers, front mudguard and pillion hump are now all carbon fibre. And it's got Akropovich cans. It's got all the goodies from the FTR1200S version. So that's adjustable shower suspension, Brembo monoblock brakes and the full colour TFT dash. So Absolutely lovely bike. Fancy electronics, ABS, lean sensitive traction control, cruise control, Bluetooth technology, all that jazz, if that's your thing, is all in there. But ignoring all those fancy electronics things that are kind of cherries on the top, if you like, the actual basic bike is a lovely machine just to ride. I really, as I say, enjoyed riding this. So this carbon version, it does look really nice. £14,699, quite expensive. Only 35 coming to the UK. And given this paper is now, this was from the edition from May the 6th, so a good 3 weeks old. But may well be all be sold out by now, so if you want one, get one quick. But I think it looks lovely, they ride lovely. Really is a beautiful bike, the FTR1200, and they've improved it. The fit and finish on it was lovely anyway, but really like the look of that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, next up. Interesting study here about electric bikes. Now, we've talked a lot about electric bikes here on the channel. In the main, I love them. They're a different experience to ride an electric bike over a normal internal combustion engine motorcycle. I'm not convinced the current version or current generation of electric bikes are the way to go, just because still the range and the cost isn't quite there, but there's no doubt the performance and the fun factor is there. If you've not had a chance to ride an electric bike and you get the opportunity, take it, because they are great fun. So yeah, very, very interesting things to ride. Not quite there yet as far as I'm concerned. This article though is talking all about whether they really are greener or not, because it talks about, you know, you've got to consider the way that the electricity that you charge them up with is generated in the first place, of course, and then you've also got to consider how much power is used in the actual manufacture of bikes. And this article is interesting. I won't go into all the details, but they compare electric cars with electric bikes, and basically they conclude that the amount of resources actually in making the electric bike sort of outweighs the savings it makes when it's actually during its life, as opposed to an electric car, which has a much longer lifespan. An electric car, it says here, has a lifespan of about 180,000 kilometres, whereas a bike at the top end would be 70,000 kilometres, or something like that. Anyway, you'll have to read the full article. You can get back editions of it, but actually it was saying the break-even point for a bike is 70,000 kilometres, which is a lot of miles on a bike. So interesting. Every day is a school day, and it was just another one of those things that just makes you think, oh, no, are electric bikes the way it's going in the current form, or have we got to do something a bit more clever? And I think it's got to maybe be something a little bit more clever. Maybe it's hydrogen fuel cells. Maybe it's just using renewable energy. Not too sure. Not quite there yet, but very interesting things, as I say. If you get a chance to ride one, have a crack on one. They're looking and feeling much better every new electric bike that comes out. Talk about things that look good. Honda Rebel. Now there's an ugly bike if ever I've seen one. Now I, in a bike news previously, I think I had I slagged off the Honda Rebel a little bit. Not that many people disagree with me actually that it is an ugly bike, but I have had a few people that say they absolutely love it. So that's fine, it's just a personal taste thing. Sorry about that if you disagree with me. The reason why I point out here is this is one of these little timelines that MCN do occasionally, where they look at the evolution of certain bikes. The reason I point this out is because I hadn't quite twigged that the Rebel has the same engine in it, the same 500cc parallel twin that the CB500RR that I recently rode had. Is it the CB500RR? Yeah, CBR500R, sorry, let's get it right. CBR500R, which I borrowed for a few weeks back in about February time, and the videos have been going up on my channel recently. I love that bike, in particular the engine. And Honda have made all sorts of bikes out of that engine, including the naked version, which is called the CB500F, and of course the Rebel. So I think, although I love the engine, I think maybe give the Rebel a miss and go for the CBR500R. Which was a lovely bike to ride, or the naked version, which looks cool as well. But anyway, yeah, so they've really, Honda have kind of, I don't know if they've taken a leaf out of Yamaha's book, the sort of thing they did with their Tracer when they brought out the triple engine, when they brought out the likes of the MTO 9, I think it was originally, and then all the bikes that flowed from that, from the same engine. Honda are doing a similar thing with this 500cc unit. A great idea. Why they weren't doing that before, I don't know, but it just shows you can use the same unit in a lot of different bikes. It makes it very flexible, and obviously is a commercial winner. All right, next story here. Again, I've been doing quite a bit of school day stuff, learning. Billet isn't what you think. So this was just an interesting little article talking about the different metals that are used in manufacturing motorcycles. Depends how Anaraki you are. I'm a bit Anaraki and love this sort of thing, and didn't really understand what it meant by bits of bikes being machined from billet aluminium. Well, I sort of did, but anyway, this made it clear. Basically, billet is just the form in which the aluminium is delivered, and it just means it's a solid block in a standard size, and then it gets machined, CNC'd or whatever to the finished article like a lovely billet yoke, for example. But really interesting, it also talks about the sort of aircraft grade aluminiums and stuff that are used, and they sound all very exotic, but actually it's just about the, the mixes of alloys that are in them and stuff. Really interesting article anyway, and if you are inclined to get a back copy of MCN from May the 6th, and there's some good reading in this one. It isn't just motorcycle reviews. Obviously, MCN have had to pull some things out of the bag to keep the paper filled with content. As I say, they've done a top job of that. Right, next up, 40 years of the GS. So yeah, amazing that the GS in its basic form has been around for 40 years now. And what's interesting about this is that they talked to the designer of the original GS, who said it was almost accidental that it came about, and kind of a back of a fag packet thing. Says here, we spent about 20 minutes sketching the idea out, and the whole thing came together entirely by accident. There was no marketing request, no official project. How many bikes would get off the ground now if that were the case? And that's how the original GS came around. Then it got developed into the bike we know today, and has been arguably, probably, definitely BMW's greatest motorcycling success story. I mean, it still outsells everything in this country. So yeah, interesting that it was never even properly planned. It was a back of a fag packet job. Okay, and then while we're talking about the GS, of course, the GS famously powered by the Boxer, and MCN have done, again, a sort of a timeline of the GS over its 40 years here. But the reason why I pulled this out specifically was I just wanted to mention something to you and see if you agree with me or not on this. And it's the current GS. They've got a picture here of the lovely current bike. It's the 1250 R1250 HP version. Definitely the best of all the GSs. They evolve and get better, of course. And it looks lovely in that paint scheme. But I want to contrast that against the 2013 bike, which is the bike that I've got. And so you could argue that I'm biased here. And they've got a picture of the red one, exactly the same as my bike here. And okay, there's no doubt that the current bike is better in terms of the engine development and so on. But the actual styling of it itself has changed. And in particular, this front bit that I've circled here in these pictures. Do you think the new bike at the front actually looks better than the old bike? Or is it just that it's different? If the current front end had been the original water-cooled or liquid-cooled bike, and then they changed it to what is the 2013 shape, would people say, oh yeah, that's an improvement or not? If you understand what I mean. So does the current one actually look better than the older one, or is it just different, I think is my question. I'll be fascinated to hear your answer, because I think, having looked close up, ridden both bikes and know both bikes very well, I actually think I still prefer the older bike. The tank on the new bike has been smoothed off and flattened. I think I quite like the contoured look of the 2013 model. Is it just me? Small point, doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. I think it's just a way of me justifying that I still love my bike. And if I could have it in the current HP colours, and thinking about it, what's stopping me, then I think it would be just as good. Anyway, and might save me a few grand in replacement. I'm always thinking about, should I replace the GS? It's one of my oldest bikes now, but it is, it's only 6-7 years old. I mean, it's not that old, is it? But there we go. Anyway, I'm sure I'm the same as everybody else, thinking about what the next bike's going to be. And I've just made a video actually on that very subject, which will be coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. All right, next paper. Okay, so the first story in this one. Riding restrictions ease. Now this is the big story as far as I'm concerned this month, and this only applies to England, in that, as you may or may not know, if you don't live in this country, we've been on lockdown because of coronavirus, and it's been pretty restrictive. We haven't been able to, basically we weren't allowed to leave our homes unless it was for provisions or one or two other very limited circumstances, but you certainly couldn't go out for a ride on your bike just for the fun of it. That was banned. Anyway, what they're saying now is you can, here in England, you can go out as far as you like. If you want to drive to a beauty spot to have a walk for exercise, you can do that. And while thinking about the various combinations of that, does this mean you can ride your motorbike just for fun? Because things like certain outdoor sports like tennis, golf and so on have been allowed as well. Does this mean you can ride your bike? Well, MCN, I'm glad to say, went direct to Downing Street and asked them to get some clarity, because I wasn't too sure when this was initially announced, but this is what they said. Having spoken directly with Downing Street, MCN can confirm you're allowed to ride a motorcycle to any open space with no limit on distance from Wednesday before last. This should be done alone or only with members of your immediate household. Maintain a minimum of 2 meters distance from other members of the public. And I say it only applies to England, but that is absolutely fantastic news. So as many of you will have seen, on that very Wednesday, I took this advice to heart and I went out and rode all my bikes, as I hadn't been ridden for over 2 months, and it's been absolutely blissful being able to be back on the bike. My heart goes out to you guys in Wales and Scotland and other parts of the world where you still can't ride, because it has just been beautiful. We've been blessed with the most amazing weather here in the UK for the last, well, 2 months basically. Throughout the lockdown, it's been the best spring and the best early summer I could ever remember. And in fact, I'm recording this May the 31st, Sunday. It's a beautiful day out there. I should be riding out there now, but instead I'm bringing you this video. But your heart shouldn't bleed for me too much. Anyway, it's been beautiful weather and it's been absolutely great for riding. So the last couple of weeks I've been out on my bike, or bikes, every day, and I've done a bit of flying too. It's been wonderful for just well-being. Again, keep socially distanced, keep, do it in a sensible way. Don't meet your mates at a bike haunt or anything like that. But if you're just going out on your own for a ride, starting at your house, finishing at your house, or indeed going out for a ride to then go and exercise, that's all completely allowed. Be careful, of course, because we don't want to put strain on the NHS if you do come off. Although, as we know, the pressure on the NHS is now greatly eased. So I think it's pretty much thumbs up to ride again now, and yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So if you want to, do that, and let's hope that those guys, our friends in Scotland and Wales, can do that soon as well. Okay, next item here, couldn't go past this one. My mate Alan, Alan Millyard. I don't know if you saw the videos I made with Alan last year. I went to his house, I had a look around his shed, fascinating guy. Had a ride on some of his two-strokes as well. Had a really good time. I'll stick a link in the corner somewhere so you can go and look at those videos if you haven't done already. Anyway, he's made his latest creation. It's up and running now. It's incredible. It's a pair of 6-cylinder Kawasaki Z1s that he's chopped up in his usual way. Sorry, 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder bikes. He's made a single 6-cylinder bike out of it, and it looks factory, as Alan's creations always do. Just love these pipes that he's made. All 6 of them look brilliant. And if you haven't done so already, Alan's got a YouTube channel. It's just called Alan Millyard, A-L-L-E-N. Go and check that out. It's doing great things. Every time he puts up a video, he's getting hundreds of thousands of views. Even the videos I made last year are getting a sort of a positive bow wave effect. The one I did about the Viper V10 bike, it's got something like 250,000 views now, which is absolutely amazing. Anyway, so that's great news. So I'm really glad that Alan's doing that. But this recent bike looks absolutely incredible, and I hope I get to see it in the flesh one day. I spoke to Alan at length actually last week, and he's got all sorts of projects on the go as ever. He's not been sitting around idle, and this I think he said, if I remember correctly, that this is the one that he's possibly proudest of so far. But basically whatever he's making at the time he's proud of. But yeah, this looks absolutely incredible, and I bet it sounds stonking. So there we go. So that's Alan Millyard. He's been cropping up a lot actually in MCN of late. Next up, this article, now, started off whinging a bit, didn't I, in this bike news. This one, bikers really can make a difference. So this is a positive story. Again, sadly related to coronavirus, but it is a positive story. And this is all about the good things that bikers have been doing during this period. And in particular, the guys at the bike shed. Now, I feel very sorry for the bike shed people. If you don't know who they are, it's effectively a motorcycle themed well, I'll say restaurant come barbers come custom enthusiast club in London. I've never actually been. I planned to go there this summer. This was one of the rides that I was going to do. I was going to jump on my Royal Enfield because that seems sort of an appropriate bike. Ride through London and go and see the guys at the bike shed and see what it's all about. I really do fancy a visit. Maybe it won't happen now because, of course, that being pretty much a business based on social interaction, they've had to close down. So it's not open for all the usual stuff they do. So while they're, I say twiddling their thumbs metaphorically, I'm sure they're busy guys, they're clever chaps that are always doing, and chapesses that are always doing stuff. But during this period of lockdown when the restaurant, etc. isn't open, they've come up with something called the Bike Shed Community Response Group, and basically they've got hundreds, probably thousands now of bikers doing great things in support of coronavirus activities, like, for example, delivering PPE to people and organisations. So big thumbs up to those guys for doing that. Excellent work, and to anybody that's got involved in it as well. Really good stuff, great PR. Of course, we hear about it here in the bike world. It doesn't make the mainstream media where all the bad stories do, and more about that shortly. But yeah, that's at least is a good news story about this whole virus situation. All right, we've had a bit of a GS theme to bike news this month. Is a GS best? Surely a rhetorical question, I hear you say. So here they've pitted the CRF1100L, better known as the Africa Twin, against the GS. They've done it in the 1250 GS exclusive TE form, which I would put to you. The TE is probably the one that here in the UK most people would buy anyway. It's the one that's got all the sort of bells and whistles as standard. And they put it up against the Yamaha Tenere 700. All these bikes I've ridden again. I'm lucky enough to have ridden them all. Bit of an odd comparison. I mean, the Africa Twin v the GS, fair enough, because they're similar priced bikes. Well, the Africa Twin actually is significantly cheaper, but you know, they're similar sort of size, method, etc. The Tenere is less than 10 grand, so a lot cheaper. So a bit of an odd comparison. But let's see what the verdict was. Right, here we are, verdict. Best bike depends how you'll ride it, which is fair enough. If best means greatest weather protection, fastest, fiercest brakes, lightest steering, most tech, the BMW R1250 GS exclusive TE wins. Ta-da! Told you it was a rhetorical question. Of course it wins. It's an extraordinary bike, they say. However, there's always a but. If you want a bike for big miles and pillions, buy the GS. But if you want a proper adventure bike, buy the Yamaha. So there we go. So unusually, the Africa Twin didn't get a look in between those three bikes, but they're all top bikes. The Tenere is the one to get if you're going to be adventuring around the world, and I don't disagree with that at all. Lighter, more practical, easy to fix, less to go wrong, etc. But let's face it, most of us aren't riding around the world, are we, doing adventures? Most of us want a bike that is fast, with great brakes, light steering, most tech, comfortable, etc, etc, that we can use every day, and that's where the GS wins. I even like the TFT on the current GS, and I'm not a TFT fan, so yeah, no big surprise there that the GS one, I guess, still the top of the crop as far as MCN are concerned. Alrighty, last story in this paper. Ducati Streetfighter V4S. This has been getting a lot of coverage in the press over the last few weeks. There was the launch of it not too long ago. They did this sort of virtual launch where it got delivered to journalists who then sort of rode it once the lockdown eased a bit. They couldn't ride it initially. And the big question that everybody's been asking apparently is, actually I'd thought of this myself, is it better than a Tuono? Now this bike itself, when it first was launched and we saw a picture of it from the side, I slagged it off a bit, said I didn't think it looked very good, and I still think that a bit from the side, it doesn't look so good. But now, having seen it in the flesh at last year's bike show, and now more of these pictures coming out at this angle that Neves is riding it here, actually the front looks quite nice. And maybe I'm just being swayed by everybody saying what a great bike it is and how beautiful it looks. Maybe that's swaying me as well, but I am warming to this bike, I must say, and I would love to have a go. Although I think bikes of this sort of power on the road are somewhat wasted, but I mean, you could argue that, couldn't you, about big GT cars like Ferraris and stuff? They're wasted on the road too, perhaps. Anyway, is it any better than the Tuono? What do they say? What it takes to challenge, it says here, sorry, it has what it takes to challenge Aprilia's Tuono V4 1100 factory. But then so does the new KTM 1290 Super Duke R and Kawasaki ZH2, which aren't going to take it lying down either. So it's not a slam dunk, to use the vernacular. It's not way better than those other bikes, but it's up there with them. So I guess I'm just going to have to wait till I can ride by myself if Ducati will lend me one. You never know, fingers crossed, Ducati, if you're watching. It'd be great to have a go on one of these at some point. No rush, but at some point in the future I would love a go on one of these. As I say, it is growing on me. From the back it looks great, still looks like a Panigale. Just from the side I'm not sure, but again, when you see these in the flesh, they're beautifully made. We'll see. I'll have to get one in my garage and then directly compare it against my Panigale and decide once and for all which one I like the look of most. I think it'll be the Panigale, but it is growing on me, that. Be interested to see what you think on the looks of that. Is it growing on you too? All right, that's it. Moving on. Last paper of the review. Hope you're still with me. Right, first off, just the editorial here in this paper from Richard Newland, which it's just so sensible here. So he said, easing of lockdown restrictions collided with a sunny weekend for most, and an explosion of anti-biking sentiment followed in the mass media. There were lots of reports of bikers, number one, making noise using roads as racetracks and then meeting up at bike haunts. Just a ridiculous idea. Does not show us in a good light, and well, I would say don't do it. Of course, you can go out and ride with another rider. You're not going to be within 2 meters of each other, that's fine. And if you've got an intercom, even better, you can talk to each other. But you know, let's not go out in great big groups making loads of noise and just basically annoying people. Richard says here, far more car drivers, walkers and cyclists ignored the rules than bikers, but we're more visible, less socially accepted, and even admitted from the government's guidance on personal transport. We'll talk about that later on. If you can use your bike legally, you should, but please don't let the side down. So completely agree with Richard here. He was looking very sharp, by the way, if you're watching Richard. He's lost a bit of weight recently. He's looking years younger. So well done him. I know how tough it is to lose weight and keep it off, so looking good there, but completely agree with his sentiments there. I hope you do too. Okay, next story I picked up here. This is this story about the government again, basically ignoring the benefit that motorcycles can bring. So they've come up with a coronavirus transport plan. Well, let me read you the bits I've highlighted here. The government have ignored the benefits of motorcycling in their own coronavirus transport plan, even after an MP raised the issue. Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State for Transport, suggested that instead people should walk, cycle or drive rather than use public transport. But fellow MP and biker Dr. Julian Lewis asked what the government were doing to encourage people to take up riding motorcycles, and the answer they gave was sorting out potholes. I mean, great that they sort out potholes, but it's not really encouraging powered two-wheelers, is it? Whilst in the short time we may need to encourage people to drive more, we shouldn't exclude motorbikes and scooters from that conversation, is what Dr. Lewis said, and I wholeheartedly agree. Why, you know, we are definitely part of the solution here. Why on earth are the government not encouraging more motorcycles? It says here one thing would be to let bikes use bus lanes in London, for one thing. I mean, it's a bit of a mixed picture, this. I mean, in some towns and cities in the UK, you can ride your bike in bus lanes. Certainly in my local town you can. And it's great. Why don't we do that everywhere? It's not like they take up a lot of room. But again, we're seen as the bad boys. It doesn't help our cause, of course, if we are screaming down the bypasses, you know, bouncing off the rev limiter when we should be staying indoors, perhaps. But at the same time, it would be nice to see the government trying to encourage it a bit, wouldn't it? So, a bit of a shame that. Right, next story. New Harley models delayed. Harley Davidson unlikely to be last firm to cool off on new bike releases. Harley Davidson have delayed the arrival of their Pan America adventure bike and their Bronx Naked until next year. The delay will be related to the current coronavirus pandemic, which has affected manufacturers across the world. BMW, KTM and Husqvarna have already announced they will not be attending either the EICMA or Intermot trade shows this autumn. If manufacturers' lobby is successful and they get a grant to or an extension to the Euro 5 time limit, it may be unlikely that we'll see many new arrivals this year at all. So MCN wondering here whether we're going to see many new bikes at all this year, which would be a bit of a shame. Every year, you know, at the end towards those, you know, traditional bike shows, sort of October time, or November, October, November, around then, loads of bikes, you know, come out and we all cover them. To my mind, actually, this isn't that terribly bad news because there's so many great bikes out there anyway, and I've got so many I've got to cover. Not that I try and cover them all, but the ones that I'm interested in. And it's just, there's an awful lot of bikes out there to get to know. So actually, if we have a year of slightly less, that works for me, but that's just a selfish view. Of course, we don't want to see the bike industry suffer as a result of this virus, but of course, all industries are suffering, so it's sort of inevitable, isn't it? So there we go, a bit of a shame. Harley Davidson have definitely said they're delaying. Will other bike manufacturers follow? I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. Right, next up, oh yeah, again, bit of a GS theme to this. This is Buy It Now. This is Neil Murray's column he does every week, and he looks at second-hand bikes, which ones he thinks are worth getting. He's saying, try the other GS if you want some cheap wheels. And what he's talking about here is the Suzuki GS500. And he's found one here in 2002 for £686. Nothing to do with the BMW GS, of course. But the reason I mention this is because this is the bike that I took my motorcycle test on. So it has a place in my heart. This is the first big bike that I ever rode, 500cc of course, and I thought it was an absolute stonking beast when I rode it. Of course, since then I've ridden things much more powerful, and this would, if I went back and rode one of these, I'd probably be wholly unimpressed. But at the time I loved it, I have to say. He says, Neil says, the engine is from the air-cooled GS series of the 1970s, and it's hard pushed to hit 110, but they're loads around and they don't break. There's no way it'll ever meet Euro 3 and not Euro 4, so they're not ULEZ compliant. So if you live in London, you probably don't want to get one, but elsewhere they're a bargain. And if you can pick them up for 686 quid, what a winner. I'm quite tempted myself. If I had the space, I'd be very tempted to get one just for old time's sake. I really enjoyed riding it. Big old thumpy twin, loved it. Anyway, so yeah, that's the other GS, the GS500. Right, next up, nearly through. Blown Away is the headline here. Kawasaki's supercharged ZH2 Ultimate Naked or too hot to handle. So we've talked about this bike before here on the channel. What do you think about this? I mean, number one, I described it before as a bloated hamster. I think it is an ugly looking bike, but I like the idea of supercharged motorcycles. But this is a naked, putting out 197 brake horsepower. It's, you know, you ain't going to be able to go very fast on the road on this. You could say, well, supercharge, it's for the track. Well, it's a naked bike, so it's not really for the track. That would be the Fed, you know, the H2, which would be for the track, you could argue, and makes a bit more sense. But this one, it's going to rip your arms off, you know, anything over legal speeds, and why are you doing those anyway? And it just doesn't look very good. So I don't know whether they're going to sell many of these. Let's have a look and see what the verdict was. The looks, by the way, again, I don't know if it's familiarity, but it is growing on me a bit. It's not quite as bad as I initially thought now, but the front end does look particularly bloated to me. What do they say here? It's surprisingly easy to live with despite being so quick. Its electronics are smooth and effective. Its riding position isn't too extreme, making it easy to live with on the road. So actually, that's pretty much opposite to what I thought. They've said dislikes, lack of wind protection is a problem on long rides. That is something, definitely. Rider modes are tricky to access and understand. Not good fiddling about with buttons while you're trying to ride, and it's too easy to go very fast. That's the big one for me. These sort of bikes just encourage you to ride like a hooligan on the road, and whilst it, you know, could be argued it's fun, it's probably not that clever. So I don't know. now, because it doesn't look that good in my eyes, and I suspect other people agree with me, I'm thinking that maybe it won't sell that many. I hope I'm proved wrong, because I want to see Kawasaki do well, but we'll see, we'll see. Again, I'd love to have a go on one, but that's kind of where my interest stops. Okay, and I'd love to hear your view on that. Last story then for now, and we end again with my mate Alan Millyard. I told you he'd been a lot in MCN. This is incredible, another bike that he's built. He built this a while ago. This is his SS50, and as I mentioned, I spoke to him at length last week. He'd just been out riding this. Now, the SS50, for those of you that don't know, was around when I was a teenager. Lots of people were riding Yamaha Fizzes at the time. This was kind of Honda's take on that sort of small capacity starter bike, if you like. Well, Alan, of course, being Alan, has taken an SS50 and made it a twin cylinder. So now it's 100 horsepower. What an absolute hoot. Really lightweight here, 80 kilograms. And according to Alan, it goes like a stink. He really enjoys riding it. And then he's built a few of these. So that was his SS100. And then he came up with this, got another one, and he's stuck in it an engine from a Kawasaki KXF250, so which is basically like an off-road bike, made it into a 250cc motorcycle. Absolutely incredible. Apparently it goes like stink. I think it looks really cool, and it looks like that engine again should fit in there. I know Alan loves to make his bikes look factory, and that looks like it could have come out of the Honda factory, doesn't it? But again, weight 85 kilograms for a 250cc motorcycle putting out 40 brake horsepower. That is going to feel absolutely brilliant to ride. I'd love a go on that one. So maybe Alan, you never know. Anyway, that's it. Okay, so that was the final paper of bike news. As ever, I've just scratched the surface. If you're interested in anything more, then you can always buy back copies of MCN, and I encourage you to do so. MCN is my sort of sole source for bike news, if you like. I've stopped buying magazines because they tend to repeat some of the stuff that's in MCN but a month ago. So yeah, it's good stuff. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Alrighty, as ever, thank you very much indeed for watching all my videos. Loads more to come. Interested in any of your comments down below, do stick them down there. Keep subscribing and keep watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, until then, this has been the Mr. and Fly. Cheerio.